Thanks for doing this. Appreciate it. I
No
got
problem.
I sent you those questions that I was curious about, and some of the ones that I've been asked. So yeah, if you don't mind, we can get right into it.
Sure.
The first one obviously is how have things changed for you as far as meeting clients, exchanging keys, that whole process. How's that changed for you?
It's changed pretty dramatically. So
Yeah.
client meetings in, I guess, the way things used to operate, obviously, and contact a client, let's say, for example, with the purchase, contact a client once we have mortgage instructions, have them come into our office, walk them through all the documents, and usually spend, anywhere from half an hour to an hour with the
Right.
purchase client. Well, now COVID-19 has completely upended all of that. I'm doing a lot of FaceTime meetings.
Yeah.
In that situation, what I do is I'll email the client all the documents in advance, usually a couple of days before the meeting.
Okay.
I'll only do this in situations where clients are able to print
Right.
large amounts of documents. By large amount, it can be anywhere from 20 to 80 pages
Okay. Yeah.
of documents. So, I'll ask the client, if they're able to print and if they're able to FaceTime.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll send the documents ahead of time,
Okay.
have them review them and prepare a list of questions either to answer before, during, or after.
Hmm.
And then I'll FaceTime with them to witness. I only need to witness the actual mortgage.
Okay.
So it's actually two documents, the mortgage and the declaration as to possession.
Okay.
So those are two documents that I need to witness the client sign.
Hmm.
I then have to prepare a special letter for registration purposes so that land titles is aware that, instead of operating in the ordinary course, which is I met with the clients, I collected their ID,
Hmm.
I can verify who they are and I was physically present. Now we need to prepare a special letter for land titles just to indicate the circumstances as to why we couldn't meet. I mean, the
Yeah.
obvious, the answer is somewhat obvious as to why we can't meet.
For sure.
So that's one way we've been meeting with clients, but not, I have clients that are elderly. I have clients that
Hmm.
don't have the ability to print.
Yeah.
So in those cases where clients actually have to come in, which, we're trying to social distance as much as possible, but in some cases we have no option. The clients actually need to come in, and there are actually certain types of documents that we need to physically witness.
Yeah.
Okay. So in those cases, what I do is I bring the clients into the office. I'll witness them signing that one document, but I'll leave them alone to sign the others.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I'll tell the clients, you can, take an hour or two if you like, take your time reading through all the documents, make a list of questions. When you're
Yeah.
done, I'll come back.
Go over them.
I'll take the documents back to my office,
Yeah.
review them, make sure that they're okay, just to keep, maintain social distancing and
Yeah.
not spend a lot of time in a room with a client.
Yeah.
Um, and then I come back and make sure that everything's in order and the clients can ask questions, before or after.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's a little bit like us. We have clients who are super uncomfortable about going out and sort of being in the public, and that's perfectly fine for whatever reason.
Hmm.
That's perfectly fine. We can do virtual walkthroughs, so with Zoom or FaceTime or whatever it is, we can walk them through the house that way. And for the people who are comfortable going into houses, we just we show up with gloves. I keep a package of gloves in the car and hand them out when we get to the showing, and there's usually hand sanitizer at the listings. And sellers are being great about it too. What they're doing is keeping lights on in the house, keeping doors open, closets open and stuff, so we don't have to really be touching a whole lot. So it's
Hmm.
yeah, everyone's just sort of pivoting and adapting to the new world that we're in. So it's people still need to buy and sell, so it's nice that we're able to help them.
Yep. 100%.
And what about the keys? Keys are just sort of, is it in the mail? How are we exchanging keys?
I'm collecting keys from clients. I'm usually asking clients to bring them in a sealed envelope,
Okay.
so I don't need to handle them, and no one needs to handle them until they make their way into the hands
Awesome.
of the buyers, right?
Okay.
So yeah, so that's typically what we're doing. Also identification. We're asking clients to make copies on their own, if possible,
Okay.
of ID, and then bringing in copies of the ID along with the original identification,
Okay.
just so I can compare the two.
Yeah, for sure. Good to know. A lot of people, and I don't know what these numbers are at now, but I read 500,000 people deferred mortgages, a million people applied for EI. What happens if somebody's written an offer, accepted it, purchased the house, now waiting for closing, waiting for possession day, and in that time they've lost a job or are expected to lose their job? What happens in that situation?
There's no set rule per se. Everything's been case by case. So I've
Right.
had several circumstances where clients have asked to be basically let go,
Yeah.
basically release of any liability under the contract.
Hmm.
I would say maybe half a dozen files I've seen that happen
Wow.
on. And in every
Yeah.
case, the sellers have been agreeable, probably for a couple of reasons. I think it's just public policy. It's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
someone's lost their job, or whether it's illness, or is unemployed suddenly, you know, it's the right thing morally. I
Yeah.
think it is the right thing to do. I think there's also a good legal reason for it too, and that I don't think there's a judge in this country that
Hmm.
would ever hold the purchaser liable under an agreement if they lost their, if something, they suffered a dramatic circumstance that changed their situation, which left them unable to complete the contract, that is, follow through with the purchase. So I
Yeah.
think sellers, maybe some sellers are being, are maybe more aggressive about it, but I think by and large, the deposits are being returned, and buyers are being let go,
That's great to know.
of
Yeah.
their obligation. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, the word dramatic circumstances, dramatic situations, and I think this certainly falls under that category. So one thing that I've been telling people is, my broker says this all the time: disclose, disclose, disclose. So if it's something that a buyer feels that they're going to lose their job or have lost their job, get ahead of the problem and reach out to the listing agent and say, hey, this has happened, or this could happen, just so that it's not happening a day or two before possession. And like you said, it's nice that a lot of sellers are being, agreeable with that. It's a tough situation, so it's nice that deposits are being returned and no one's being too aggressive about it. I'm sure it's happening, but it's nice to know that everyone just kind of respects the severity of the current situation and are returning deposits. So that's good to know.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Um,
One thing I was going to mention about that, you touched on a very
yeah,
important point that I don't think I raised, which is probably the most important thing that a buyer can do if they're in that situation, is to let you or I know immediately,
yeah,
as opposed to waiting. Because the longer you wait, the closer you get to possession. That puts undue pressure on a seller who's going to be less, agreeable, or less likely
yeah.
to let you to walk away from the purchase. So.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if we can give them, as much time as possible to, get the property back on the market for the seller's case as soon as possible, I think they'd be a lot more agreeable to doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last question I have is, what can we do as far as the offer for buyers and sellers, terms, conditions, clauses, anything in there? What's a sort of a best practice these days to add to an offer, just with everything going on?
I think it's worthwhile. I've seen COVID-19 clauses
Hmm.
added to offers to purchase.
Hmm.
I think, in this day and age, I think it's certainly worthwhile to have that clause pretty much in every offer to purchase. What it does is that it protects both sides, because there could be a
Yeah.
circumstance. We've been talking about buyers
Yeah.
walking away. There have been some circumstances where I've had sellers that have been concerned about actually being able to fulfill their end of the agreement. Simple
Hmm.
example: I had some elderly clients who had movers cancel on them. They literally, were unable to move all of their belongings out of their house
That is a good
because
example.
they weren't physically able to do so. Well,
Yeah.
technically they'd be in breach of the contract.
Hmm.
But with the COVID-19 clause, basically saying, in the event of, a dramatic change in circumstance, whether it's the buyer or the seller,
Hmm.
the parties agree to delay possession until such time as, they can accommodate possession, or,
Yeah.
unfortunately, in some cases, the deal falls apart because one or both sides, or either side, is not able to either sell the property or buy the property.
Hmm. Yeah, it's the same thing that we've been seeing, as well as the 14 days. So if for any reason the buyer or the seller can't close on the set date, because of COVID-19 illness symptoms, whatever the case may be, it's sort of both the buyer and the seller are pre-agreeing to push back the possession date a minimum of 14 days to self-isolate, quarantine, whatever the case may be. And then both parties pre-agree to that new date if something like that was to happen. And I think it's the same for professionals like yourself. If mortgage brokers or lawyers or any professional can't close in time, I think it's 14 days, and then 3 business days after that is when the new possession date will be, just so that when everyone's back to work, they can then close the deal. So is that the clause that you've been seeing? Is that the one you're referring
Yes,
to? So
that's the one. That's the one that I've seen the most of.
yeah.
And I like it only. I mean, for several reasons. It protects both sides, but I also like it because it also contemplates the fact that you might have a situation where, the lawyer or the bank or even land titles is unable to, process documents, provide
Yeah.
money, or register documents. So, and it allows for the last of the three. Once the last of the three is able to actually perform, then 3 business days from that point. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. There's more people involved in the sale of a home or the purchase of a home than just the buyer and the seller. So it's important to have that in there as well.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
those were sort of the three big questions I had for you. Is there anything else that you've been seeing coming up, or anything else that you wanted to touch on while I got you here?
You know what? I guess the only thing I would mention is that, as you said earlier on, people are still buying houses. People are still selling houses.
Hmm.
The market's still active. Obviously, not as active as it typically is
Hmm.
springtime in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Um, but I think so long as everyone uses common sense, there are ways to stick handle around, the COVID-19 obstacles that everyone's dealing with.
Yeah.
Whether it's a matter of providing us with closing costs, or providing us with copies of ID, or for signing documents. We've yet to had to turn away a client because of COVID-19. We've just managed to resolve every situation. In one circumstance, I'll just tell you a really quick story. I
Yeah.
had a client I had to meet in my parking lot. It was an elderly gentleman who just got out of the hospital and had just had surgery. So I stood for about a half an hour in the parking lot, passing documents through a car window.
Wow.
So, and there are lots of stories like that. I've
I'm
spoken to
sure.
other
Yeah.
lawyers who've had similar circumstances where it just wasn't possible for someone to get inside of an office, but documents need to be signed. So
Hmm.
I think people are just getting things done however they need to.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's nice that everyone's just figuring out ways to help people buy and sell, not even just real estate, but just everything. Everyone's figuring out ways to adapt to this new landscape that we're in, and it's important to do that because we got to keep the economy going and help people buy and sell. So um,
Absolutely.
yeah, no, it's good. I'll put somewhere in the video here. I'll put your contact information. Is that okay if people want to reach
Sure.
out or have questions and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for
Sure.
taking the time to do this. It's good to chat, and yeah, hopefully we'll see you soon.
Sounds good. That would be great. Thanks for
Thanks,
the
man.
opportunity to answer your questions.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Jeremy.
Anytime. Keep well.
You too.
Thanks.